Sometimes in hockey, it's better to be opportunistic than good, and the Edmonton Oilers found a way.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. This is my fourth NHL season as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and I want to thank everybody that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we've got your team covered every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We're new FanDuel customers. If they can head over to FanDuel.com, download the FanDuel app, have a chance at winning up to $300 in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. So on today's show, we are going to be breaking down the Edmonton Oilers 2-0 victory over the New York Rangers, which I was in attendance for, which is why the episode has a bit more hoarseness in my voice maybe than usual, but a very entertaining hockey game that in the aftermath, sitting here doing Locked On Oilers, I can smile to myself and look at the absurdity, look at the ridiculousness, and come out really entertained. So we're going to start out just talking about the flow of the game, the energy, the vibes. We can dive into the underlying numbers a little bit. In our second segment, I want to just talk about perspective and trying to build out the overarching top-down view. And then in our final segment, we're going to gas the tires a little bit. We're going to pump the tires for Trent Frederic and Stuart Skinner, two guys who have been a little maligned in their times in Edmonton and had important performances tonight that were driving factors. So let's start out with the obvious. The Rangers had played 4 games coming into tonight. They started out against Pittsburgh. They played Buffalo. They played Pittsburgh again, and then Washington again. Against Buffalo and Pittsburgh the second time, the Rangers scored a ton of goals. They ran up the score. They put together strong performances. Against Washington and against Pittsburgh on opening night, the Rangers did not score at home. And again, tonight, the Rangers could not score. And it was not for a lack of trying. And that's where I want to start this conversation. So much of our game-to-game perception and analysis is skewed off of a handful of things. Number one, what were the underlying results within the game? Not only did you score, and we'll talk about game impacts in a little bit, because I do think this is a really good example of why game impacts might skew your perception of results a little bit. But by and large, and the expectations are, the Rangers should be a playoff team, and the Oilers are shooting a weight class above that, frankly. The Oilers are shooting for Stanley Cup contender. And something we've talked about quite a bit over the first few weeks of this season is, how do you get there? What are the benchmarks? What are the signs? What are the indicators of a team that has the capacity to potentially win a Stanley Cup? And one of the real indicators, and something I think the Oilers, when they were at their best last year in the regular season, when they were on that nice run from end of November through early January, is they were able to win games in a variety of ways. Now, you don't want to play the type of game the Oilers played tonight. The Rangers had a good chunk of the scoring chances. They had a good chunk of the high danger scoring chances, and they had a good chunk of the expected goals, and they had a really good job on the power play. The Rangers had several power play opportunities. The Oilers did not generate a single power play opportunity. All of those environmental factors are really challenging to overcome. And this is where we lose people whenever we talk about analytics, underlying numbers. It's important that I make this point. So if you're an everydayer, I apologize. These underlying numbers are a good indicator. They don't guarantee. Just because you have more shots on goal, more scoring chances, high danger expected goals, does not mean the puck is actually going to go in. You know, it's funny. I went to the game with my girlfriend, who is novelly curious about hockey because of how much I care about it, but doesn't particularly care on her own. And even she had said, well, how come the Rangers coach doesn't tell them to play better? And I said to her, well, they're playing pretty well. They just have to put the puck in the net. And that's the key. When we talk about these underlying numbers, they are not a guarantee of what is going to happen. And it ties into what I had said before, the idea of score impacts. And we're almost there, I promise. When you are in a game like this as the Oilers, you are living sequence to sequence. You know you're going to be on your heels a lot. You are going to be in your own zone. You're going to be forechecked. You're going to be cycled. And it's your job as Stuart Skinner, as the defenders, as the defending forwards, to just be in the right place at the right time. The sweep Ty Emberson makes of that loose puck off of a rebound saves a goal. That puck was ready to be capitalized on by the attacking Rangers player. I think it was Will Cooley. It might have been a Connor Sheary. But Emberson, knowing right place, right time, sweeps that puck out, clears it out. And right place, right time is really important. And this game did not feel like a playoff game in terms of the speed or the intensity, but the style of game where one team has a good chunk of the chances, the other team is trying to hold its ground, to be opportunistic. And then as the game went along, you saw both teams get a little hairy there in the middle period and the third period, where looking for a little bit more offense. There were a lot of guys, blown changes, guys standing in the neutral zone, flat-footed, waiting to receive a stretch pass to try and attack the offensive zone from both teams, mind you. But the Oilers showed you that they are okay with being in a low-scoring, defensive-oriented game. And I know a lot of the reticence amongst Oiler fans about those types of games is Stuart Skinner. And I don't think Troy Stecher looked great tonight, but by and large, I think the Oilers' defense in the aggregate has been pretty solid. It hasn't really broken. It's bent, but it's important you have that, because there are going to be games like this throughout the course of the year where the other team, they're just a little bit quicker to pucks. They're just a little bit more opportunistic and they're in the right place at the right time. But one of the byproducts of being a team as good as the Oilers are, and I do think it's important, you can win games you don't play well. And I think that arguably might be the single biggest indicator of a really strong team, is the Oilers probably put out a C+ effort tonight, and they won the game. I wouldn't say easily, but comfortably. With 1-0, with the Oilers up 1-0, and watching Mike Sullivan continue to roll all four lines evenly, continuing to roll all three defensive pairs evenly, I never felt that the Rangers were going to break through. And look, that's anecdotal evidence, of course. How I feel isn't necessarily an indicator of what's going to happen. I do want to point that out. But sitting there, it didn't feel like the Rangers were going to be able to break through. And that is a testament to the Oilers being able to play in a game on their back foot, on their heels. And make no mistake, the Rangers controlled this game tonight. But the Oilers, on the handful of sequences that decided the game, a couple of those flurries around the net front for Stuart Skinner, the Trent Frederic breakaway. We're talking about a handful of sequences determining this game. And the Oilers had the guys who were able to swing those plays in their favor. Now, that does not necessarily mean they are always going to swing those things, those variables in the Oilers' favor, but it does show you that they have the capacity to. Now, we always talk about how likely something is, game impacts, all of those things are interconnected. All of those feelings, all of those energies, all of those vibes. And coming up next on Locked On Oilers, I'm going to explain what I mean when I say game score, talking about the vibes of that game and why it did feel like a playoff game, plus a whole lot more. So be sure to stick around to this edition of Locked On Oilers, where you've got your team covered every single day. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. Monarch Money is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances or the thought makes you anxious, Monarch is here for you. Monarch does all the heavy lifting. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visualizations, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money. And Monarch Money promises you will never, ever touch a spreadsheet. Monarch makes you aware of things about your financial habits. For me, I wasn't saving as much as I needed to between my investments, yes, my retirement, and things I would like to do, like vacations or buy expensive things like these headphones I'm wearing right now. Monarch Money helps you keep on track for your financial plans. Do not let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year subscription. That's 50% off your first year subscription at Monarch Money with code LOCKEDONNHL. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers as we are breaking down the 2-0 shutout victory over the New York Rangers. And when I say playoff vibe, when I say game impacts, those ideas are interconnected. And when a team gets out to a lead, and look, we're talking about a very modest lead. We're talking about a 1-0 lead. The impact that has on the team that is trailing is material. It shows up statistically that when teams are trailing, when they are down 1-0, 2-0 in a game, they create more offense. Now, there are reasons. You're going to be pinching more aggressively at the blue line, your defenseman jumping up into the play. Your forwards are going to be more aggressive, getting in deep, trying to keep the puck closer to the net mouth. All of that is interconnected. So, as the Oilers get that lead on the Trent Frederic goal, that breakaway, which, hand up, Trent Frederic, nice play. And I've been kind of harsh. I've been a little, I won't say pessimistic, but I would say doubtful. I was not a strong believer in Trent Frederic's skill set. I didn't think he was particularly exciting as far as a marquee offseason decision. I know they were pretty excited about it. We did that episode back in August that a lot of people responded to pretty well, that maybe I had missed something. Maybe the Oilers noticed something or identified something they think they can get more out of him. And maybe that's still the case, but Trent Frederic, who up until tonight had been playing a lot with McDavid and Draisaitl, ultimately we saw the first real line shuffling of the season go on tonight at the hand of Chris Knoblauch, who tinkered quite a bit, who put together quite a few different permutations. We saw the debut of Jack Roslovic. Troy Stecher drew in for the injured Arik Regula. The expectation is that Jake Wallman will be in on Thursday. Regula has a chance to play this weekend against the Devils on Saturday. So with all of that in mind, and just talking about the feel of the game, it is important to talk about how we can distill these ideas out. And one thing I've been really adamant about in the early phases of this season, especially right now, is that the Oilers are integrating a lot of new pieces. They are trying to turn over a decent chunk of this roster, especially in the bottom six, particularly on the wing, but you're trying to integrate Tomashek. You're trying to integrate Matthew Savoy and Ike Howard. And really quickly, you start to realize how fluid a lot of this situation is. And for the Oilers to come on the road and play a team that's been playing good hockey, and I know the Rangers are sitting at 2-3 after tonight, but the Rangers have played 3 pretty good games in a row, going back to their game last Saturday against the Penguins. And Shesterkin was very game. He made quite a few really quality saves. I thought defensively, the Rangers didn't really give the Oilers a whole lot. But the Oilers, when they had their opportunities in front of them, were able to capitalize. And when we're talking about this type of game against this type of team like the Rangers, you don't need to dominate. There aren't style points in hockey. Does it feel better? Is it more notable? Is it something maybe you feel more inclined to build off of? If you beat a really good team, if you dominate a really good team, sure. But in these early stages, while the Oilers are sorting things out, while they're trying to figure out who's going to play with who and in what situation, picking up wins is a great feeling. And I know there is a perception, and I've been guilty of this at times when it comes to the underlying numbers. I know there is a perception within the underlying numbers community, the analytics community, from the outside, that we're trying to rain on everyone's parade, that we don't appreciate wins, that we're too caught up in the numbers. we meticulously monitor those underlying numbers, the scoring chances, the expected goals, the high danger chances, because we want to identify patterns. When you identify patterns, that can help you notice things and determine what's real, what's sustainable, and what isn't. If the Oilers are going to be a bona fide Stanley Cup contender, they are not going to be able to get by generating only 30% of the high danger chances in a given game. Most nights, if you get out high danger chanced 11-3, 15-3 in all situations, and then 5-on-5, 11-3, you are going to get smoked. More often than not, if the other team can create 15 high danger chances to your 3, you are going to get smoked. But the Oilers have the capacity, when Stuart Skinner plays well, when they get goals from guys like Trent Frederic and Adam Henrique, I know, who had the empty netter, that you're not expecting, you can exceed expectations. And that's the beautiful thing about sports, and something that I really harped on when it came to Savoy, to Howard, to Tomaszek, to a lesser extent for Kapanen and Podkolzin. When you're not sure what you're going to get out of someone, and you get little spurts and little flashes, they start to entice you. You start to believe. You start to become invested. And that's an exciting place to be as a sports fan. When you are watching guys figure it out in real time, that's what it's all about. And it's early. This is the third game the Oilers have played so far this season. They are playing a very spaced out schedule. They are on a long road trip now. And we're not going to have a great feel for this team probably until mid-November. You know, we go back to that American Thanksgiving benchmark. I think it's like 70% of teams that are in playoff spots on American Thanksgiving ultimately end up making it. And that's really a good point of delineation, because at that point, we have 15, 20 regular season games played. We kind of have a feel for what guys are going to be that given season. And right now, the foundation for what you're going to be the rest of this season is being established right now. And it's not just results. It's not just production. It's confidence. And this is going to set up nicely for talking about our final segment, so I won't get too far ahead of myself. But think about what Trent Frederic's feeling about himself. Think about what Stuart Skinner's feeling about himself. Maybe Howard, Savoy, to a lesser extent McDavid, Draisaitl, Tomash, all of these guys. And you could say this for every single guy who played tonight, the guys in the press box, and Calvin Pickard, the backup goalie. In these early stages, you are trying to get a feel for your game. And the more confident you feel, the stronger you feel, the better you feel about how you're playing, the more likely it is you're going to be able to replicate that. And the more likely you are to replicate playing with that confidence, you're probably going to be able to produce more. And it's not a direct one-to-one. And I understand there's an implication that as professional athletes, you need to be able to perform on command, that when the chips are down, when it is a big situation, that's what separates the greats. That's why Michael Jordan is so revered. That's why Wayne Gretzky is so revered. That's why the marquee players in every sport are defined by their postseasons. Why, until LeBron won, there was a perception of him being a choker. And when you perform over and over again, you earn credibility, you earn respect. And we have a long way to go for Trent Frederic and Stuart Skinner. But coming up next, I'm going to tell you why tonight was a really good omen for their starts. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. Put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use on the FanDuel app. What I love about FanDuel is the way it makes every single game enticing. If you want to build a parlay to watch the game with your friends and cook up a squad ride, FanDuel's got you. If you want to ride the player props market instead of picking the game, FanDuel has so many options. And of course, if you're watching the game and you feel the momentum shifting live underfoot, live lines make it happen. So FanDuel has just one question for you. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Thank you so much to everybody who is hanging out on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers as my hoarse voice and I try and make it through this episode. So, whenever we're talking about a player's performance, it's hard to distill out what is individual, what is sustainable, and that really becomes the essence of the work we do here. And the big thing that I do want to reiterate, I want to see these guys cook. I want to see Trent Frederic score 20 goals for the first time in his NHL career. I want to see Stuart Skinner be a 9-10 goalie and win 35 games. Those would be dream outcomes for the Oilers this year. But my understanding of what I think good journalism is, and yes, I do still consider this opinion journalism because I do the research, it's fact-based, and I tell you when I'm talking with my feelings. I can be tough on these guys. I can distill out their entire output as hockey players to he's not good or he's disappointing. And when guys have games like this, and look, I know we're talking about one Frederic goal and we're talking about one Skinner shutout, it's encouraging because it's tantalizing. They show you, I have the capacity to do this. Then the question becomes, how often can you do it? Can Stuart Skinner do this in important games in May and June? Can he do this in division games against Vegas? Can Trent Frederic give you 15 or 20 goals if he plays in your top six? Maybe he sneaks onto your first power play. I'm not saying that's what I would do, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that in the next 3 weeks or so, as they wait for Zach Hyman's return, to see Trent Frederic maybe get a look in the spot that had been previously occupied by David Tomaszek. And look, I know the Rangers are in a weird place right now where they're trying to figure out who they're going to be as a team, new coach, a lot of new players. I really like watching guys figure it out. It is my favorite part of being a sports fan, regardless of sport, regardless of league. Watching somebody who has struggled have that light bulb go on above their head is one of the great rewarding feelings. You know, Baker Mayfield is somebody I have long been a fan of, dating back to his days at Oklahoma, and I thought it was over. After Carolina, after the Rams, I did not think Baker Mayfield would ever be a high-end NFL starter again, but you look at the tape, and he is explosive, dynamic, and playing with unreal confidence. You look at Sam Darnold in Seattle, who after stops in the Jets, of course, where he was drafted, in Carolina, San Francisco, Minnesota, he reassembled himself. And I think it's a little bit different as far as Stuart Skinner and Trent Frederic go. Those are not as long of winding roads, not as many stops, but Stuart Skinner is in a contract year. There is a non-zero chance that after this year, Stuart Skinner is going to go to another franchise and the Oilers are going to be trying to figure out what their goalie situation looks like. And you have moments like this. You have the Western Conference Finals each of the last 2 years where he objectively outplayed Jake Ottinger, and you're left pondering. And I'm not saying I agree with Stan Bowman's decisions, but I can at least understand them. I can get what he sees in Stuart Skinner, what he sees in Trent Frederic, and as somebody on the outside looking in that doesn't sit in the personnel meetings, I don't need to agree with what you're doing. I don't. I am not trained in the same way you guys are. I am not trained in the same way Stan Bowman is. I am not trained in the way the same Pro Scout is. But if I can at least understand your thought process, that it's rational, that it's based in fact, it's based in evidence, okay, great. I might not agree with you, but I get what you're doing. And when it comes to Trent Frederic, it's a little bit easier to see than Stuart Skinner, former first-round pick, somebody who, by and large, didn't get a lot of top six opportunities in Boston, was often deployed in defense-first situations, not given opportunities to play with a lot of skill position guys. I can get why the Oilers and Stan Bowman think there might be a little bit more there. I'm not saying 30, but 20 goals for Trent Frederic shouldn't be out of the question. That's what I am saying. And as for Skinner, real quick, I want to see the dude succeed so bad. There is nothing better than watching a goalie find his confidence again. It is a beautiful part of our game. Goalie is the hardest position in the sport to get right from a manager perspective, and it's the hardest one to build back up if the confidence is gone. We have watched many a talented goalie find a rut never to return, and some of the greats have been defined by their ability to climb out of a hole. And that's often what separates the mediocre from the good from the very good, the good from the very good from the great, the very good to the elite. How do you respond to adversity? And we've heard a lot about the new goalie coach, that they've tried to reassemble Stuart Skinner between the ears, that they feel the talent is there in spite of his limited agility, in spite of his limited athleticism. They think Stuart Skinner's physical tools, his size, his length, are going to be enough for him to figure it out at a reasonable enough level that the Oilers don't feel like he's going to be a liability. And yes, your goal should be to do better than he's not a liability at any position. You know, I hear people equivocate all the time about third pair defensemen, fourth liners. No. You look at the Panthers, they don't play any bozos at any position. Like, morally, yes, Matthew Tkachuk is a bozo, but he's very good at hockey. If you want to go all the way, if you want to win the whole stinking thing, if you want the best trophy in all the sports, you got to find your better than not a liability guys. And I would love for Stuart Skinner to find it, to put it together, to play at a 905, not even a 910, 905. If Stuart Skinner gives the Oilers 905 goaltending, he's going to win 35 to 40 games, and the Oilers are going to be a dangerous team. If he is closer to what he has been historically, if he is closer to what he's been historically, the Oilers probably win 30-ish of his starts, maybe 25-ish of his starts, and they piecemeal the rest of it together. But this Oilers team has the capacity to hang with anybody. That's not news. That's the expectation entering the season as the betting favorite to win the Stanley Cup. But they can hang with anybody. They can win any type of game. And most importantly, they got Stuart Skinner and Trent Frederic to step up in a game where Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl had a bit of a hard time making things happen. And for the Oilers to go where they want to, they're going to need to figure out their depth. As much as they have, just having it alone does not mean it's going to sort itself out. But that will do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you so much to everybody who made today's edition of Locked On Oilers their first listen. Please, please, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast on iTunes or Spotify. Please leave a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, thank you so much. Hit that subscribe button, hit that alarm bell, get a notification whenever new content goes live. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL and Locked On NHL Game Night for everything happening around the National. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.